Well, it says we're live. Always do that. It is time for the News and Notes show here on the Audible. That's right. It's the Footballguys.com podcast. So Cecil, Lammey, and Sigmund Bloom. Bloom, I'm in Indianapolis.
Yeah.
I'm here. I'm ready for the scouting combine. Of course, I got here a couple of days early because things don't kick off till tomorrow on Tuesday. But, brother, we still got plenty to get to when it comes to NFL talk.
Yeah, you taking up residence in Indy, an apartment. So starting the trend. No, it's great. The football world is centered there, and for good reason. In addition, as we talked about Friday, not just the draft, but a lot of NFL gears will start turning as all these people get together in Indy, including one Cecil Lammey.
Yeah, now the buzz is about Tom Brady potentially landing in Tampa. Bloom, let's start there because the Indianapolis news that we have as far as the Colts, which is where we expect Phillip Rivers to go. Now, maybe you'd think that Tampa is where he'd go with Bruce Arians, but there are dominoes that have to fall. Indy is keeping their options open at quarterback. Jim Irsay has said this. We already know that they'd be interested in Phillip Rivers with Frank Reich there. But now there's buzz about Brady in Tampa, which is kind of a new destination when we think, of course, our stoner degenerate Jason here in the chat room is like the Raiders. We think Brady with Las Vegas or Brady with the Chargers, but Brady with the Bucks?
Well, Bruce Arians did say it depends who's out there, right? He said something to that effect. Lots of good analysis. Pewter Report did some great analysis. We love everything Pewter Report does, one of the OGs in terms of team-centric coverage. And they really parsed how the tone, Peter King also, the tone on Winston got more and more negative from Bruce Arians. And in so much as there are straight shooters among the coaching ranks, Bruce Arians is one of them. So he's certainly open to other possibilities, but he said specifically, well, we have to see who's going to be out there. And it could be, the Saints getting Drew Brees checks one of the boxes, but there is that big Tom Brady situation. And see, so you can go back to the team you covered. He was down here like 8 blocks away, Peyton Manning, on Saturday, Irish and Tuck Saturday. If you could come to one day Mardi Gras with Fat Tuesday, Irish and Tuck Saturday would be it. Look, let me know if you're coming down. Remember when Peyton Manning was out there at the beginning? Now, I know we can reverse engineer this and say John Elway wanted a way out of Tim Tebow. But coming off of that playoff victory, was it conventional wisdom that Denver was one of the top 2 or 3 teams for Peyton Manning when he got released by Indianapolis? I don't think it was. Quarterbacks, Hall of Fame quarterbacks, don't become available on the market all that often. And we shouldn't put bounds on who would make a play for those quarterbacks. We put together credible stories about, the Raiders and their new stadium and John Gruden, you never count him out. The Chargers, Brady's Southern California, and they have a new stadium to move into. I don't think Brady would be a great fit for Bruce Arians' offense, but we should not put artificial boundaries on teams that might go for a Tom Brady, at least among the teams that aren't settled at quarterback. And see, that's like half the league.
I've always said 12 teams have it figured out and 20 teams are scrambling, and let the scrambling continue. Of course, the Derek Carr thing, the Instagram post, Bloom, him and Khalil Mack, people speculating that Derek Carr would go to Chicago. I think the Bears fans just want to get out of Mitchell Trubisky. But where would he end up? And if Brady actually leaves New England, does that open the door for potentially Derek Carr to go to the Patriots?
Well,
him and Brady swap spots.
Right. Well, sure. Look, Carr seems to be the guy that if the Raiders get Brady, maybe even if they don't get Brady, because Matt Waldman has talked a lot about how John Gruden is fickle. And John Gruden pushes his quarterbacks hard, and he can be ready to move on. So Derek Carr came up in Pewter Report when they said, if it was Mark Cook, if they decide to move on from Winston and the Raiders get Brady, keep Carr in mind. Adam Johns of The Athletic just wrote an article this morning about, is Ryan Pace ready to move on from Mitchell Trubisky, or does he have in him what it would take to move on from Mitchell Trubisky? And the answer isn't quite no, but it is maybe for the right person. And Derek Carr's name comes up in that article, Cease. Maybe Derek Carr is the quarterback that everybody has in the back of their mind. I know how to get the most out of him, right? Quarterback coaches, offensive coordinators. They say, I can do something with him. Josh McDaniels. It's very possible that he's that coveted quarterback because we can remember before he got hurt, that horrible Oakland-Houston playoff game, before he got hurt, he was the quarterback of the league, right? I mean, there was a moment that the glowing way we talk about whoever it is at the moment, Patrick Mahomes or Deshaun Watson, Derek Carr was that guy. And he's still on the upslope, or at the very least at the peak of his career. So I think he's another one that if the Raiders get Brady, or maybe even if John Gruden wants to go in another direction, they have the ammo to go get Tua or whoever they want. Perhaps Carr could be much more coveted than we think. But see, in the background, I am looking at this musical chairs, carousel, these things. Andy Hicks wrote an article. I'm just about to put it live at Football Guys about the quarterback landing spots. Everyone should just be aware of this idea that, like you said, 20 seats. I think maybe 15 is a number that I would commit to say there are 15 teams that aren't 100% settled at quarterback, and there's going to be a chain reaction. I think a few of these quarterbacks might be left out in the cold. Maybe Teddy Bridgewater, where you're going to be looking at a 5. If the Chargers decide they're fine with Tyrod Taylor and maybe don't take a quarterback this year, there might be fewer spots than quarterbacks than we think. But I do think that Derek Carr, because of all this buzz attaching him to all these different teams, is one of the guys that we knew won't be left out in the cold.
Well, Bloom, let's make up the 5. And here's how we do it. Those 5 teams, which we may, debate about, they're kidding themselves.
Sure.
Okay. So
give it time.
Teams that haven't figured out. There's 15 teams that are kind of, and then there's 5 teams that are like, we got our guy. And I mean, Tennessee, for the love of God, Tennessee. Wasn't there a Brady article there? Or
yes.
A Brady suggestion like Tennessee?
Sure.
They're going to go with Tannehill when they could get Brady? What?
Right. And that was Diego brought it up in the chat room. Why wouldn't the Titans do it? And I think that's important for Brady. And whether we soberly look at Brady's game and say there are limits and Father Time is catching up, it's just the same way. He's down here, Kate, love of my life, diehard Saints fan now. Why don't the Saints turn the page? Well, you just don't turn the page from Drew Brees if Drew Brees wants to come back to the team, right? You just don't do complete due diligence on Tom Brady if Tom Brady is out there. So why not the Titans? Sure. I think that what Bruce Arians said, because Bruce Arians will come out and say it, is something that a lot of NFL decision makers have on their mind right now of, well, I'm waiting to see what happens before I commit to a plan or a course of action this offseason at quarterback.
Well, speaking of quarterback, Ben Roethlisberger's begun throwing, but still months away. And listen, here's what they're going to do, Bloom. We've done this long enough to know. He's going to be limited or not work in OTAs and minicamp, and then training camp will be ready. But now, and I have to get the name correct, but it looks like ESPN's, who is it, Brooke Pryor? Of ESPN believes that there's concerns for Juju Smith-Schuster. Caught just 8 catches on 11 targets in 6 quarters. He played with Ben last year. The Smith-Schuster needs another reliable offensive weapon to be at his best. Don't they already have that? And they already have 2, by the way, in Deontay Johnson and James Washington. Ben just needs to get out there and stay healthy. And then we have to see what does he have left in the tank, because, Rivers is close to being done, if not done, and Eli is done. Well, Ben's right there too, just missed a year.
Yeah, and Receipts, what I'm most concerned about, I'll bring up the name Matt Canada again. Some creativity, some moving the offense into the 21st century to some extent beyond what Ben Roethlisberger has done with his drawing up plays in the sand or otherwise the way that he's done it as the quasi-offensive coordinator. But yeah, I think that the Steelers should be happy with what they have right now at wide receiver. I think that a 5th receiver, certainly, or some depth they may look into. Some of these players like Ryan Switzer, et cetera, not working out to fill in the gaps. But it is all about Roethlisberger. And then, the other thing in the background here is Mason Rudolph the backup? Are they going to maybe go to the well again in the draft after what they've seen affirmatively from Rudolph? Are they going to be stubborn about his development, even as a backup? Because we all felt that hopelessness. Well, not we all. You either felt the hopelessness or you laughed or maybe like at a barf bag beside the TV when you were watching the Steelers this offseason. I think they need a new plan at backup. I don't know if they believe that.
Yeah, that's unfortunate what they could possibly believe at the backup situation. But this draft class is one of those where, okay, we talk about the quarterback situations, like there's going to be plenty of teams that just go with the rookie and just throw in the
Yeah.
kid in there,
Yeah.
whether that's the Bengals or what have you. And speaking of holding the bag, we're kind of waiting on the Andy Dalton situation. Derek Carr is not going to be one of those quarterbacks that kind of misses out, but is Dalton one of those guys? You mentioned Bridgewater. We were just excited. I think, didn't we do the last show after Bree's decision?
Yeah.
We're like, hey, Bridgewater going to get paid. What about Dalton? Now,
No.
he seems like one of those guys.
Right, and it's a little more complicated with Dalton because of the trade, although maybe it's a little less complicated with Dalton because his contract is extremely reasonable. I don't know what he's getting paid off the top of my head, like 17 million or 15 million or something like that, 19 million, 20 million. And again, we can go back to the Dalton and Kaepernick contracts. I mean, so as a quick aside, speaking about Derek Carr, right? We can go back to the time when Derek Carr was one of the it quarterbacks in the league. And he got signed to a 5-year, $125 million extension. See, do you remember the reactions to that? That's crazy. Now that's considered very reasonable. That's actually one of the selling points for trading for Derek Carr, is you'd only have to pay your quarterback $20 million. So Dalton has that going for him as an asset. But I think Andy Dalton is the Ryan Tannehill of this class, as in the 2019 Ryan Tannehill, where maybe it's Chicago, maybe it's Tampa with Jameis Winston, a team that has a starter but isn't totally sold on their starter is going to pick up Andy Dalton. So I think that he's more of a secondary wave, a plan B, not a plan A, but a plan B that's going to end up being a plan A, and maybe like Ryan Tannehill have this second chapter of his career because, hey, they say Joe Burrow doesn't want to play in Cincinnati. I think that's unfair. He hasn't said anything like that, but maybe Cincinnati's been holding Dalton back.
Yeah, shocker. Cincinnati not doing things the right way. And you mentioned, well, okay, Dalton could be this year's version of Tannehill. News items about Marcus Mariota, who obviously won't be back. Jim Wyatt, dear friend of the show, from Titans Online now. He's with the Titans official team site. He has been for a few years, but reporting that, hey, Mariota's not going to be back, pretty much. We already know that. But where does he end up? There is buzz, slight buzz, Bloom, and I will dig into it a little bit more, but there's a slight buzz the Broncos could bring him in after they get rid of Flacco. And no, Flacco's not – they're not saying good things about Flacco to potentially trade him. Nobody would give you anything for Joe Flacco.
Nothing.
Broncos are saying good things because they're very good at PR, and they know, not to – the combine's going to happen. I'm talking to Elway and Vic Fangio tomorrow, actually going out with the Broncos tonight for dinner. Broncos TV has its perks, Bloom. But I will say, like, yeah, I could see a guy like Mariota backing up Drew Lock. That seems right to me. Don't know what the price tag is. Don't know how willing the Broncos would be to pay said price tag because they're going to buy a defense and they're going to draft an offense this year. But Mariota, if we're talking Tannehill staying with the Titans, maybe Mariota then goes where and does what?
Well, this is one where we again should. I mean, so here's a name, a team. Why not Seattle? We should be thinking not in terms of current quarterback situations, because anybody and everybody could improve their backup quarterback situation just about. What we should be looking at is organizational philosophy about second chances, organizational philosophy about, hey, when you come here, everything that happened in the past is behind you. Let's just look forward together. We have a plan for you. So that makes me think of Seattle. Now, I'm not saying
that sounds like Pete Carroll.
Right. Because what you have with Mariota, so the good thing about Mariota is, by all accounts, he's a terrific teammate, right? He's you want your daughter to date him or something like that, right? He has good football character. There's no complaints about Mariota and his dedication, or maybe he's not a fiery leader, or maybe even truly a leader, but he is a teammate and he is a buy-in team effort guy. But you also have to be honest as an offensive coordinator or quarterback coach. So I don't think there's any quarterback coaches or offensive coordinators out there thinking we can turn him into the guy that they thought he was going to be when he was the number 2 pick, right? I mean, that ship has sailed. But what you can turn him into is later career Colin Kaepernick. What you can do is have a backup who can come in. So another thing to maybe think about is what teams have a starter that they might not feel comfortable getting through the entire season. As Pittsburgh, hello, where you look at your quarterback and you see potential for injury. Maybe whatever team takes Cam Newton. Wouldn't Marcus Mariota fit pretty well in an offense geared around Cam Newton? Now you have to make him, Mariota, a little bolder as a runner. He doesn't think of himself as a weapon as a runner. Your backup quarterback, maybe your starter, your number 2 pick, you don't want him to get hurt. And Mariota actually had his own durability issues. But a backup quarterback, hey, lay it all out there on the line. Let's keep the pulse going for our playoff hopes or whatever the team's trajectory is in that season. So I think, again, it's a wide range of teams that could go for Mariota. And absolutely, he can have an excellent second part of his career as a good backup. And of course, I'm going to say Pittsburgh again here because I think defense-oriented teams, I think teams that when the starter were to go down, they would circle the wagons. They would try to win low-scoring games, running game-oriented teams. It's funny because it circles back to like, maybe he should be back with the Titans as their backup because it's actually a decent fit in terms of organizational philosophy. They know him in the building. It will be interesting because I think we're going to learn a little bit about the organization that goes after him and who knows what kind of advice he's going to get because this is a really important moment in his career.
You mentioned circle the wagons. I immediately thought of Buffalo.
Sure.
And I was like, Matt Barkley. Sorry,
yeah.
Joe.
You can do better. Yeah.
Bomb here in Indy, but yeah, you could definitely do better than that. It is the Audible and it's the Footballguys.com podcast. Cecil, Lammey, Sigmund, Bloom. I'm in Indianapolis in my apartment. I'll walk around the apartment here in a little bit. It's pretty cool.
Yeah.
But Alshon Jeffrey now, his agent denying the report that he wants out. Bloom, you've done some work on this.
Mm-hmm.
Now that the denial is out there, do you believe it?
I mean, it doesn't matter. Is that an acceptable answer?
Yes.
I just want to go off again, and it'll be interesting to see what Howie Roseman does. And he was the toast of the league a few years back, digging the team out of the Chip Kelly era and taking them to the pot of gold at the end of the rainbow in the Super Bowl. But early on in the season last year, they converted his salary this year, $12.75 million, guaranteed. And I think they converted some of his salary last year to a bonus to open up cap room. I still can't remember, and I should have done a little research on this. What did they even do with that cap room? Because it was in September. Like there was speculation. Ooh, what are they going to do? Why are they opening up this cap room? I don't really remember them doing anything with it. Nothing that changed the course of their season. But now they would have been off the hook with Jeffrey having no guaranteed money. So let's tell a little story about Alshon Jeffrey, right? He was pretty successful in Chicago in his rookie contract, but all he could get as a free agent was a 1-year, $14 million prove-it deal from the Eagles, a little bit more than what Devin Funchess got last year, and he proved it during that season. He got a 4-year, somewhere in the neighborhood of $55 million extension when he was 27. Now you have a 30-year-old Jeffrey. If the league didn't trust him to make a long-term deal with him then, and the Eagles were the one team that saw him up close and said, yes, we'll commit to you, no one's going to commit to him now. So even if the Eagles want to trade Alshon Jeffrey, this is a Brock Osweiler deal. This is okay, what pick are you going to give us? And it's going to be interesting to watch if this becomes more of a trend this year of teams trading picks for cap room, because there's so much cap room that you can't possibly spend the cap room on what's out there in free agency, especially after we see franchise tags and otherwise see how teams protect the assets that they have. So the Eagles are just stuck with Jeffrey, I'm afraid. I'm not saying they're not going to release him, but this is going to go down as one of their greatest misses, being eager to pay him top of wide receiver market price this year for a player that doesn't want to be on their roster. Probably they don't want on their roster, but the cliff doesn't necessarily come up fast at wide receiver, but for the less durable guys like Jeffrey, it does.
It does. And what they did with the money is probably just carry it over. You
Yeah.
speak of cap room, it's like when the Broncos reworked Joe Flacco's deal, that was for Justin Simmons. We're still waiting on a deal. That was for Andy Janovich, who got his deal last year. And it was for Connor McGovern. And there's potentially disagreement. Lassie Bark
Yeah.
about what they should do with Connor McGovern among the coaching staff. Listen to my local show for more of hot Connor McGovern talk. But let's get back on.
Which Connor McGovern?
Yeah, this tight end market that people now reporting. NFL agent Joel Corey, who has reported that George Kittle is going to reset the market. Austin Hooper and his free agent, because Kittle at least has a year left on his deal. It looks like Austin Hooper's deal, 44 million in the range of 44 over 4, 26.5 million guaranteed. Would that get it done? 11 million per. Now Kittle will reset whatever Hooper gets this year, Bloom.
Yeah.
But is that enough for Hooper, who we all know if he's healthy can be, top 5 tight end?
Well, top 5 in fantasy. All right. That's the thing. I just watch the Falcons here, right? Because I believe that Tom Dimitroff will do the right thing and let him walk.
They don't have any money. They've already paid Brian and Julio, and Devontae Freeman's still eating up a bunch of money for now.
Right. For now. He's due $6 million or so, but he's gone. But look, I think that while Hooper had a nice run as a fantasy tight end the last 2 years, what he actually adds to the game in terms of tilting the field, adding tactical value that the defense has to account for, he's not that guy. And we've tracked this for years that as Matt Ryan is struggling within a game, that is when the targets go to Hooper. Their offense is going to continue to be built around Julio Jones and Calvin Ridley, and Hooper can take advantage of the space that opens up in the middle of the field, but so can a lot of players. They could sign Jacob Hollister to a matching deal in RFA now that Seahawks have Greg Olsen, and maybe get similar production, similar acumen as a receiver from is what they're getting from Austin Hooper. Austin Hooper doesn't do a lot where he adds to a play by making a catch that only he and a few other tight ends could have made. He doesn't add after the catch in the way that, say, a George Kittle or Jonnu Smith or someone like that does. So they're going to do the right thing. And like you said, Cease, maybe because they don't have a choice, and they're going to let somebody else use their extra cap room. I don't know, Jacksonville, who knows, is going to pay him 11, 12 to go to your original question. Is it enough? 11, $12 million a year is enough. If Tyler Kroft and Jesse James were getting $6 million a year, $7 million a year last year. But I think it's going to go down as a signing, and for fantasy too, because I think he was in an ideal situation for fantasy, and you're going to see the wind go out of his sails wherever he ends up.
Well, we've got some great conversation going on in our chat room here on our YouTube channel, youtube.com/footballguys, DOTCOM. Like, comment, subscribe, share this video, share all of our bite-sized videos as well. It certainly helps grow the channel, and that's how you support what we do here. In addition to, of course, checking out footballguys.com. Calbudo brings up the crime that Diggs is dealing with. And that's got the conversation going about where he could go. You said the Chiefs want them to trade for Diggs. Our man Jason up there in Greeley, our pot stoner degenerate, says that's a hot take. Diego chiming in. Do you think the Saints would pony up for Diggs for one last shot? Well, the Saints should do something, Diego, because I can wait for Traquan Smith forever, but I also could ride a unicorn to the scouting combine. It's probably the latter is more likely to happen. So, yeah, Michael Thomas and Littering and, they could use someone. Why not Diggs?
Well, we bring up the Saints and the Chiefs. I bring up the Chiefs because you should think in terms of Diggs as a strong move. Of course, the Raiders coming up and how things didn't go well with Antonio Brown. For that matter, even the Bills, the other team that was going to trade for Antonio Brown, they're still looking for a true number one wide receiver. And I did one of a SIG section on this last week. I think it's credible that he's going to be available. Now, what would it take? Just a first round pick and more? Because that's the other thing you think about, Cease, right? If you're the Saints, this is the classic. Brandon Cooks got passed around in deals like this. Like, if you're in a win now window, who's going to help you win? Stephon Diggs or whoever's going to be there. I mean, any number of guys at the end of the first round. It's Diggs. So I think you look for a team that wants to make a strength stronger. So you're pairing him up with a quarterback who can harvest more of his value than Kirk Cousins did, and an offense that can harvest more of his value than Minnesota can with him as the 1A. So I think it's just a question of a team being willing to trade a first-round pick, and they should be willing to trade a first-round pick for Diggs. And then, see, that's where it gets exciting for fantasy. Because for fantasy, and I think somebody said this in the chat room, and I 100% agree, he can become a top 5 fantasy receiver. Put him in the right place. He has that ability. So it's just a question of time and a new home. And I think for fantasy's sake, we should all be hoping for that. And absolutely, there's a non-zero chance he gets traded, as much as Vikings fans might not like that.
I don't know if you'd like this as much for fantasy, Bloom, but you mentioned him going to the Chiefs. We also had the Raiders mentioned about Calbuto, the AFC West. Y'all are missing the team.
Yeah.
Pat Shurmur and the Denver Broncos could pick up Stephon Diggs. Yeah. They've got 5 picks in the first 3 rounds. So do you want, if let's say Henry Ruggs is gone at 15?
Yeah.
Is that you taking Jalen Reagor there? No.
Right.
You taking the Visca Chenault there? Probably not, based on medicals. Or are you just giving that pick up for Stephon Diggs? And then you've got 4 more picks in the next 2 rounds. Like, don't discount. And again, Bloom, I'll toss it back to you. For fantasy purposes, like catching passes from Drew Lock, maybe not as exciting as catching passes from Pat Mahomes, but Denver in that situation where it's Cortland Sutton and nobody. Cortland Sutton, Stephon Diggs sounds really nice.
It does. And Cecil, we can open this up and just start talking about, we can do a little exercise here and just talk about teams that need receivers. We've already mentioned a lot. Arizona is another team that we have to consider as a possibility for him. We have to look at teams that are looking for that alpha in the draft, but they might not need to use the draft to get that player. Green Bay. Now, I know that Minnesota probably wouldn't trade Diggs within the division, but why not Green Bay in terms of teams that would make a strong move at wide receiver and that are also set up to take advantage of what that wide receiver, Philadelphia, obviously Philadelphia and New England, I think should be the first 2 teams we think of as teams that would trade for Stephon Diggs. There's relationships there between GMs, there's needs, there's championship windows. Because of all that talk that we said about Brady, I don't remember who it was one of the Mass Live writers who tried to handicap the chances of Brady's going to put this team and this team and this team. And the favorite's still the New England, right? I haven't seen if there's odds of where Brady's going to end up, but that's still the favorite. Is he going to stay back there? So we have to consider New England. There's your weapons, Tom Brady. So there's a lot of teams. And I think that, again, this is what's exciting about you sitting there in Indy, in your pad, in your Indy, I don't want to say bachelor pad because you're a wonderful father and husband, but it's your pad, man. Once these wheels start to turn, right? If New England knows they're going to get Brady back, then they have an incentive to go strong to the hole for Diggs, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. A lot of things. The plate tectonics are about to be in motion.
Yeah, well, I mentioned earlier, Cincinnati's screwing things up. What are they going to do with AJ Green?
Yeah. It's hard.
The reports now are saying that they're going to keep him, which then I go, well, yeah, no, shut your mouth. Like, they should keep him, but it's Cincinnati, man. I don't trust them to make the right decision. And I want to pull it up just so I get the source correct for who said that the Bengals most likely to re-sign AJ Green. Looks like PFF had predicting the top landing spots for the top 50 free agents. It looks like Anthony Treach. I don't know Anthony. I'm sure he's the greatest guy ever. But AJ Green with the Bengals. Yeah, it sounds awesome. Great. Do you trust it?
Well, this is tough because we have to. It's just like when we do mock drafts. If we're not trying to do the mock draft of what I would do or what the team should do, but we do the mock draft of what we think is likely that this team will do, right? We're trying to get in the mindset of the Bengals. And the Bengals, as another SIG section video, I tried to stand up for the Bengals, or at least tell a story of where this could be a positive offseason for them, because the players are showing a lot of fight and push back against the idea they're a bad organization. Joe Burrow could be that transformational figure. Maybe some of the lack of commitment to winning can go by the wayside a little bit with turning the page. But this is a team that you, from AJ Green's behalf, you want him, if they want to keep him, pay him like 3 years, $45 million or something like that. I mean, AJ Green is a Hall of Fame level player. I'm not saying he's going to be a Hall of Famer. I'm saying AJ Green at the top of his game is a Hall of Fame level player. The funny thing here, Cease, is with all the talk of medicals at the combine, is AJ Green. So here's a sub discussion, all right? Sub discussion alert. Is AJ Green breaking down? I mean, maybe.
Yeah.
I mean, how many seasons now have there been where there's a leg injury or ankle injury, foot injury? And maybe the wisest thing to do is to let him walk and get a compensatory pick and let somebody else pay him that last contract where he's not going to play at the level he has been playing at. So actually being a cheap organization, a truly cheap organization, because I think the one scenario that makes everybody unhappy probably is franchise tagging Green. He's already indicated, and AJ Green, and see, this is something I'm sure you can speak on, but not too much at length. Some players speak out, some players speak out maybe even more than what is called for. And then there are players like AJ Green that's like, well, if AJ Green is saying anything to show any bit of frustration, then it's probably like 10 times what he's expressing.
Right.
He doesn't want the franchise tag. I think he's earned with his service to the franchise that either commit to him or let him go someplace that's going to commit to him, which is why if we're taking the negative view of the Bengals, we'll say they'll franchise him, he'll be unhappy, and he'll probably break down again, and everyone will, just say this is really sad that this is how the late part of his career is going to go. So if he is out there in free agency, though, all of those other teams that we talked about, I mean, actually, AJ Green makes so much sense to me with a quarterback like Tom Brady or, Andy Dalton, another quarterback that maybe hasn't have the biggest arm, isn't the most creative quarterback outside of the pocket. But AJ Green, if you need the play, he's going to make the play as long as he's healthy.
Well, doing some news and notes today on a Monday here at the Scouting Combine. Ryan Greeno in our chat room says, what's Eckler's value since Rivers isn't funneling the ball to him anymore? Well, funny you say that. An ESPN story highlights yesterday, that Anthony Lynn, Chargers head coach, says Austin Eckler needs to see 15 to 20 touches per game. So, okay, Rivers isn't there to funnel him the ball anymore. Sounds like Lynn is going to have a mandate to get him the ball anyway. And by the way, side note, Bloom,
yeah,
I am a keynote speaker to Eaton Middle School on March 6th. So I think that's about a week and a half away. And Eaton Middle School is the home of Austin Eckler.
Right. That's awesome. That's fantastic. Okay, taking this apart, teasing apart these things here. How many touches a game was Christian McCaffrey supposed to get? We almost got it. I mean, all these things are inflated whenever Tavon Austin was supposed to get like 10 touches a game or something, right? So if Lynn is saying 15 to 20 touches a game, that's not confetti if you have Austin Eckler. That tells me that he doesn't see Austin Eckler getting up to that 300 touch level, true feature back. And while Melvin Gordon is not going to be back with the Chargers, highly unlikely, and Justin Jackson's still there. So we didn't see it come to fruition last year. Justin Jackson wasn't healthy while Melvin Gordon was out, but wasn't healthy for the whole time. We could see, a 60-40 kind of tilt there. But I do think that bringing up the idea that Rivers is going to be gone is something to consider. Tyrod Taylor, you did a good video, Cecil, on Tyrod. And Anthony Lynn is confident in Tyrod. He said as much. They play together. Of course, in that same interview, you have Anthony Lynn, doing some Herm Edwards, and throwing shade at probably Phillip Rivers, saying, well, we just need a quarterback who would take care of the ball. I think if we had taken care of the ball better, we would have won more games. We just need to keep it close. We just need to not give it up as much and take it away more than we give it up. That doesn't sound exciting for offensive football at all. That sounds like one of the weakest fantasy offenses. So perhaps not that everyone is getting ahead of themselves, but Austin Eckler was a top 7, 8 PPR fantasy running back last year, not just fueled by the 4 games that Melvin Gordon was out, but maybe the pie will be smaller. He'll have a coach that will just install someone into Melvin Gordon's role, and Eckler won't have that big step forward that a lot of people are forecasting.
Yeah, we're waiting to see what happens there. Also waiting to see what happens as Jim Irsay denied reports that the team is going to work out something with Marlon Mack, saying like, we like him, but we like the other guys too.
Yeah.
Poor Marlon. That's not the news you want.
No, and Marlon Mack, unfortunately, is one of those players that it's brutal, it's heartless, but it's probably how teams in a rational market value kind of way should handle running backs, which is use them up on your rookie contract and then move on. And it's terrible because running backs on their rookie contract are not getting compensated to the level of their production. And then when it comes down to compensating them, all of a sudden we're going to draft somebody, or we're going to get somebody cheap in free agency, like the Patriots. When's the last time the Patriots broke? They've never broke the bank for a running back through all of those years of success. So I think that Irsay sees. Is this a first time on the Audible when we say Jim Irsay makes sense? I mean,
yeah,
you are an indie. It does make sense, And Mac, his game took a step forward this year. He hasn't been as injury prone, I think, as expected. He still doesn't add a lot as a receiver, but Jordan Wilkins isn't that far off of him as a runner. Nyheim Hines needs to be used more. There's a ever replenishing supply of running backs in the NFL. So I think Jim Irsay got this one right. And I think that teams should just ride these running backs into the ground on their rookie contract, as unfair as it is to these running backs.
Yeah, and that's why it's funny. The Broncos are trying to work something out with Philip Lindsay because he can renegotiate his deal after just 2 years because he was a priority free agent and he was not a draft pick. So I'm not saying Lindsay would hold out if they don't get a deal, and no, that's not a Lassie bark. But it's interesting that Denver would work something out with him this offseason, as that may be the case.
Mm-hmm.
So interesting, Bloom, as our questions from the chat room. Brian, I think, has one of the most interesting ones here.
Mm-hmm.
Which player is in most need of a fresh start on a new team? I'm going to say Corey Davis. Corey Davis certainly could use a fresh start on a new team and to get some better play from his game. Is there anyone that pops out to you, Bloom, as to a new team, a fresh start that would kind of get a player back on track that we were, thinking of or we were high on? Certainly Davis, one of those players, kind of like a top 5 Cody Latimer. But we'll see if it works out better than what Cody's done post his Broncos career. Is Corey Davis that best answer that you can think?
I think so. Of course, Le'Veon Bell comes to mind right away as a player that would be better suited on another team right now, but that's not going to happen. Did a little sig section on that. I'm kind of going through the Rolodex of teams in my mind. It's hard to say. I mean, how many bridges can Eric Ebron burn? He's not going to be back with Indy. Remember, everything went sour at the end there. He had surgery that they say they didn't tell him he can do that. He's certainly, Eric Ebron is a player from a fantasy perspective that could drop off the face of the earth or end up in an ideal spot and be a featured player in a passing game. I'm not saying he's going to live up to those hopes, but a team can bring him in with those hopes. So I think it's another big offseason for him as he leaves another organization in his wake. How about Leonard Fournette?
Did he peak last year? I mean, look at what he did as a receiver. That's something I never expected Fournette to do. As a runner, sure, we expect him to pound the rock, but as a receiver, what he did last season, was that his peak season?
Yeah, well,
or is it signs of more to come?
Certainly, for an old school team that wants to have that running back on the field for all 3 downs, the way that Tom Coughlin did, he can provide that. Although I think there's other players who can add more value than he added as a receiver, although he was a competent receiver. But he was a Coughlin pick. And what's going to be interesting, see, we got so much coming up. We got 5th-year options. Will they pick up his 5th-year option? I mean, they don't post odds on these things, but I would put it at least a coin flip, if not in favor of them not picking up his 5th-year option, all to talk about running back salaries. So yeah, what team would want to commit to him? I mean, how neat would it be, Cease, if Seattle, because we already know that Greg Olson, I mean, they're in a win now window, they're pushing. If they said, let's bring in an a la, now it's not as bad. It's not like Marshawn Lynch's situation where Lynch had used up worn out his welcome with Buffalo, CJ Spiller and all that stuff. But with Chris Carson hurt, Rashad Penny hurt, why not Leonard Fournette in Seattle? Or maybe, another player we can think about as potentially on the move, or at least that their team would want to move him, is Todd Gurley. And then that creates a vacuum potentially for someone like Fournette. So see, I'm looking at, Fournette comes to mind because he was a pick of the previous regime. And that's a whole other Thursday night kind of topic, that teams do indeed make decisions on players. John Dorsey comes to mind immediately as, well, he's not one of my guys, right? I'm moving on. So Rashard Higgins comes to mind as a player that's going to have a fresh start somewhere and could be a very good player. I don't think he was ever going to get the full chance he deserved or earned in Cleveland. This is a fun topic. We could do a whole hour on this.
Yeah, we could definitely do a whole show on this, because I'm thinking Rams, I thought of Todd Gurley, but then I also thought of John Kelly. I was like, just get him out of there, please. Somebody use him. Then I thought of Rashad Penny. It's like, well, it's just kind of not working, and obviously health, but maybe a fresh start would make him healthier. Yeah, that's kind of my thoughts. Bloom, are we missing anything before we say sayonara? I'll give you a tour of the apartment here while you can see. This is where I do my radio show from. I don't know if you can see my radio equipment right there. That's it.
It's kind of a mod, like those soft colors, calming.
Yeah, and that's it. But that Comrex right behind me is about $20,000, and it makes me sound. Yeah, exactly. It makes me sound like I'm in Denver. It makes me sound like I'm in studio just over the internet. So love the technology. This is my apartment. Circle Center, whatever, is just like behind that building right there. So I'm a block away from my favorite comic book store in Indy, and a block away from like the Starbucks that I go to all the time. So got a little kitchen area there. Yeah, pretty cool. And then back there's the bathroom and the can. So
nice.
Set up with the apartment and ready to go for the combine, which starts tomorrow. I'll be in line about 6 a.m. for my credential, along with 1,500 other people.
You need to start some sort of annual event with your apartment, like Cecil Lammey's fondue party or something like that.
Well, what I'm doing this year, because I brought an extra headset for my show, is I'm going to do like a literally on the couch.
Nice.
A literal round table. So I'm just going to invite people over and come sit on the couch, do a segment with me.
Yeah. Just make sure you have like some of those Clorox wipes or something, coronavirus, that headset. If you pass it around, you might be, where did it start? Where did the coronavirus outbreak start in the U.S.? Cecil Lammey's couch.
Yeah. Well, actually, I got a couple of bottles of Jack Daniels, so
that'll do it too.
Yeah. So there you go. But that's I think that's a pretty good show right there, Bloom. Don't you think?
Yeah, and it's just fun to check in. I think the main thing that keeps coming through when we talk about this stuff Friday today for everybody out there, in so much as there's part of your brain that's still tuned into football, there's going to be a lot more to be tuned into. It's going to be exciting franchise. The destinies are going to change, right? Taylor Gabriel and Prince Amukamara are out there now as free agents. The Bears freeing up $13.5 million in cap. What's that about? Or is it going to be like an Alshon Jeffrey situation where it's for nothing, for something that you're going to regret? But I think that it's a fun time, as always, to be a football fan, and your juices are going to get flowing thinking about your team's future in the next few days.
He's Sigmund Bloom. You can follow him on Twitter at Sigmund Bloom. I'm at Cecil Lammey. The show is at the Audible. Make sure to like, comment, subscribe on this YouTube channel. Thanks for liking us on Facebook. Hi, Facebook. How's it going? And thank you guys for doing and joining us here at Footballguys and kind of being a part of our community. We certainly welcome the opportunity to do more of these shows and to just talk about football with you. Chat room, great job. Sigmund, awesome job. I'm Cecil Lammey saying thanks very much for watching and listening, everyone. Stay tuned. And as always, stay frosty.